The sun filtered softly through the cream curtains of the kitchen window as Emily stood barefoot on the cool tiles, humming to herself while flipping blueberry pancakes. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the buttery warmth of the breakfast she was lovingly preparing. Her belly, round and full with 7 months of new life, stretched the fabric of her soft cotton robe. She paused for a moment to rest her hand over the baby, feeling a gentle flutter in response. A small, content smile formed on her lips. Everything felt right. Tyler had just received a long-awaited promotion at work, and after years of saving, they'd finally bought the little 2-story home on Oakwood Lane. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs, warm, cozy, and filled with dreams of the future. The nursery upstairs was already painted a soft sage green, the crib assembled, and the closet lined with tiny onesies and teddy bears. They had come so far from where they'd started, countless shared struggles, quiet late-night talks, and tears over past miscarriages. But this time felt different. This time, it felt like their miracle was finally real. Tyler appeared in the kitchen, still adjusting his tie. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, kissed her cheek, and murmured a thank you as he glanced at the breakfast spread. "You're spoiling me," he joked, squeezing her gently. Emily laughed softly, turning to kiss him fully on the lips. "You deserve it." She gathered her things for the prenatal class, slipping on her shoes while Tyler grabbed his briefcase. At the door, she kissed him again, her eyes full of trust and affection. "See you tonight, love." As she stepped outside into the cool morning air, she had no idea how completely her world was about to change. Emily arrived at the community center only to find the doors locked and a bright yellow sign posted on the glass. "Today's prenatal class is cancelled due to staff illness. We apologize for the inconvenience." She stood there for a moment, a little disappointed. She'd been looking forward to the class. They were supposed to practice breathing techniques today, and she'd even brought a notepad to jot things down to share with Tyler later that night. With a sigh, she turned back toward the car, gently lowering herself into the driver's seat, one hand instinctively resting on her stomach. As she sat there, an idea struck her. It was still early in the day, and Tyler wasn't expecting her home until late afternoon. What if she surprised him with lunch? The thought brought a sudden flutter of excitement. She hadn't dropped by his office in months, and Tyler always said how much he loved little surprises like that. It felt like the perfect spontaneous gesture, something sweet and light to brighten both their days. She drove toward his favorite takeout spot downtown, a small Mediterranean cafe tucked between 2 busy shops. The owner, an older Greek man who knew her by name, greeted her warmly and prepared Tyler's usual order: grilled chicken souvlaki with extra garlic sauce and warm pita. Emily waited by the counter, gently rubbing her belly as the baby rolled and kicked. She smiled down at herself. "You like this idea too, don't you?" she whispered. As she headed back to her car, carefully balancing the bag of food and a bottle of sparkling water, she imagined Tyler's face lighting up with surprise. She couldn't wait to see him, to kiss him on the cheek, and share a quiet moment over lunch. She had no idea that behind his smile, a secret was waiting. Emily pulled into the parking lot of Tyler's office building, still humming softly to the tune playing on the radio. But as she scanned the rows of cars, her smile slowly faded. His silver sedan wasn't there. She circled the lot once more, her brow furrowing. Maybe he had parked in the visitor section today? Or maybe he had to step out for a quick errand. Still, something didn't sit right. Tyler was nothing if not predictable. He followed routines like clockwork. Especially now, with the baby on the way. She pulled into a free space and picked up her phone, tapping into their shared digital calendar. Her fingers hovered, scrolling down to the time slot for now. Quarterly performance review, 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. According to his schedule, he was supposed to be in a meeting right this moment. She glanced again at the empty parking spot he always used, then back at the time. It didn't make sense. His meeting was important, he'd even rehearsed for it last night. So why wasn't he here? For a moment, she considered calling him. But something stopped her. Maybe he left his phone behind, or maybe the meeting had been moved off-site and he'd forgotten to update the calendar. She didn't want to come across as overbearing. He hated when she worried too much. With a sigh, she set the bag of food back on the passenger seat. Maybe he left something at home, his laptop, a file? That could explain it. Deciding not to dwell on the oddness of it all, she started the engine and turned the car toward their house. The baby shifted again inside her, almost as if reacting to her unease. She shook it off. Tyler always had explanations. But today, none of them would be enough. When Emily pulled into the driveway, she noticed the front door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to make her stomach twist. Tyler was careful, almost obsessively so, when it came to locking the house. He always checked the handle twice before they left. Always. For a moment, she sat frozen in the driver's seat, her eyes fixed on the gap between the door and the frame. Maybe he had come home sick. Maybe he just forgot. She tried to convince herself, but something inside her had already shifted, something cold and uncertain. She climbed out of the car, lunch still in hand, and approached the door cautiously. "Tyler!" she called softly as she pushed it open, stepping into the cool quiet of the foyer. No response. She closed the door behind her and took a few steps into the living room. The air smelled faintly of his cologne, but stronger than usual. Her eyes darted around. The house looked untouched, yet something felt off. She heard a noise from upstairs, a faint giggle, followed by the low hum of music. Her breath caught. Emily placed the takeout bag on the hallway table, every nerve in her body suddenly alert. Her fingers curled slightly around her belly, as if protecting the baby from a danger she couldn't yet name. She started toward the staircase, each step feeling heavier than the last. The music grew clearer with every rise, a slow, romantic jazz tune. And then, another sound, a woman's laugh. Not hers. Someone else. Intimate. Too comfortable. Her heart thundered. She tried to convince herself it was the TV. Maybe he'd left something playing. But deep down, her instincts screamed otherwise. She gripped the banister tightly and kept climbing, afraid of what she might find but unable to stop. Her breath was shallow, her pulse racing with every step toward the unknown. The baby kicked again, hard this time, as if sensing the tension. At the top of the stairs, the bedroom door was closed, but the sounds inside were unmistakable. Emily reached for the knob with trembling fingers, unaware that this moment was about to shatter everything she thought she knew. The door creaked as Emily slowly pushed it open, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the music anymore. The world seemed to slow in those few seconds, the air heavy, the room still, until everything shattered. There they were. Tyler, shirtless and flushed, lying tangled in their bedsheets. And beside him, Jessica, Emily's best friend since college. The woman who held her hand during fertility treatments. The one who helped paint the nursery and cried tears of joy at the baby shower just a week ago. Jessica's hair spilled over Emily's pillow, her laughter cut off mid-breath as her eyes met Emily's. Tyler's face turned pale instantly, his mouth falling open as he scrambled upright, clutching the sheet to his chest like it could hide what had already been exposed. Jessica pulled the blanket around herself, frozen in place, her expression twisting from shock to guilt to something uglier, like annoyance at being interrupted. Emily stood paralyzed in the doorway, unable to speak. Her mind refused to process the image. Her lungs wouldn't fill. The lunch bag slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a soft thud, its contents spilling across the carpet. Tyler's favorite pita wrap now lying in shreds next to her shattered trust. Neither of them moved. Tyler muttered something. "Emily, But it was too late. The silence between them screamed louder than any apology ever could. The pain hit her chest like a hammer, so raw and piercing it made her physically stagger backward. Her hands flew to her belly instinctively, as if to protect her unborn child from the emotional wreckage crashing around her. She turned and bolted down the hallway, vision blurred with tears. Her foot slipped slightly on the top step, and she had to grip the wall to stop herself from falling. The baby kicked again, violently now, as if echoing her panic. She half ran, half stumbled down the stairs, the betrayal burning like fire in her chest. By the time she reached the front door, she was gasping for air, choking on disbelief, heartbreak, and the bitter taste of betrayal. The world outside was spinning. Nothing was real anymore. Emily's hands shook violently as she gripped the steering wheel, her foot slamming the gas pedal without thinking. The world outside the windshield blurred through her tears, but she didn't care. She had to get away. From the house, from the bed they had defiled, from the people who had ripped her world to shreds. Her chest heaved with ragged sobs, the air refusing to stay in her lungs for more than a second at a time. She gasped, trying to breathe, but the pain was too much, too deep, sitting like a stone on her ribs. Her mind reeled as images crashed into her like waves. Tyler's smile at the altar as he slipped the ring onto her finger, the way he'd cried the first time they saw their baby's heartbeat on the monitor, Jessica's voice trembling with joy as she swore she'd always be there for Emily, through everything. Lies. All of it. Carefully wrapped and handed to her like gifts, only to explode in her hands the moment she dared to trust. Her stomach cramped suddenly, and Emily whimpered, reaching down instinctively to cradle the swell of her baby. "I'm so sorry," she whispered through clenched teeth. "I didn't know. I didn't know." She couldn't go any farther. With her vision clouded and her soul torn in half, she veered off the road and pulled into an empty gas station lot. Her fingers fumbled with the gear shift as her body convulsed with another sob. She slammed the car into park and threw her head against the steering wheel, letting out a scream that came from the deepest part of her. The sound echoed through the car, raw and unfiltered. Her tears soaked the sleeves of her blouse as she curled over the wheel, shaking from the effort of holding herself together when she had nothing left to hold on to. For the first time since learning she was pregnant, Emily felt completely alone. The kind of aloneness that made her question if she would ever be whole again. Emily sat slumped against the steering wheel, her breath slowly evening out but her body still trembling. Then, without warning, a bolt of pain shot through her lower abdomen. She gasped, her hands flying instinctively to her belly. The pain struck again, sharper this time, radiating through her lower back and down her thighs. Panic surged. It wasn't like the usual aches, this felt urgent, wrong. "No, no, no," she whispered, fumbling for her phone with shaking hands. She managed to pull up her obstetrician's number and pressed the call button, clutching her stomach with her other arm. After a few rings, the nurse picked up. I'm having pains," Emily said breathlessly, her voice cracking. "I'm 7 months pregnant, and something's not right." The nurse's tone changed instantly. "You need to get to the hospital now. Don't drive yourself. Is someone with you?" Emily looked around the empty parking lot, tears blurring her vision. "No. I'm alone. Call an ambulance or ask for help immediately," the nurse instructed firmly. Just then, a woman who had been refilling her car a few feet away noticed Emily's distress and rushed over. "Are you okay? You need help." Emily nodded, barely able to speak. The woman took one look at her face, the way she was holding her belly, and didn't hesitate. "Come on. I'll drive you." Moments later, Emily was in the stranger's back seat, her hands clenched around the seatbelt as the car sped through traffic. At the hospital entrance, a nurse with a wheelchair was already waiting, thanks to the stranger's call on the way. Within minutes, Emily was admitted, monitors attached to her belly, for line started. The baby's heartbeat echoed through the room, steady, but rapid. She closed her eyes, silently begging for her child to hold on. Tyler was pacing the bedroom, hastily pulling on his shirt, when his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Still disoriented from the chaos that had just unfolded, he grabbed it, expecting maybe a text from work. But when he saw the caller ID, Emily's doctor's office, his heart dropped. He answered immediately. "This is Tyler Mason," he said, breathless. "Mr. Mason, your wife was brought to County General a short while ago with abdominal pain. She's 7 months along, correct? She's being monitored for possible preterm labor." The blood drained from Tyler's face. "What? Is the baby, is she okay?" "She's stable for now, but we advise you to come immediately." Tyler didn't respond, he just ended the call and grabbed his keys. Jessica sat up in bed, her expression dazed, wrapped in the bedsheet like a child caught sneaking candy. "Tyler, what's going on?" He turned to her, eyes wide with panic and fury. "She's in the hospital. She could lose the baby because of us." Jessica's face twisted, but she said nothing as he stormed past her, slamming the door behind him. She was left alone in the silence, facing the weight of what they'd done. At the hospital, Tyler arrived out of breath, demanding information. A nurse pointed him to the maternity ward, but said she wasn't ready for visitors. He sank into a chair outside the room, hands gripping his knees, head bowed. He had betrayed the one person who had loved him without question, and now he might lose her forever. The steady beep of the fetal monitor echoed quietly in the dim hospital room. Emily lay propped against the pillows, eyes open but unfocused, staring at the muted light filtering through the window blinds. Nurses had reassured her, the baby was fine, strong heartbeat, no sign of early labor now that she was stable. But nothing about her felt fine. Not anymore. Her body ached, but her heart was far worse, numb in places, torn open in others. She hadn't spoken since arriving. The nurses had tried to encourage her to eat, to rest, but she barely responded. When the doctor told her that Tyler had arrived and was asking to see her, she simply shook her head. Her lips didn't move. She couldn't bear to hear his voice. Couldn't see the face she used to love. Instead, she asked for a pen and paper. It took her nearly an hour to write the letter, her hand trembling over every word. She poured her heart onto the page, describing the betrayal, the shock, the unimaginable pain of seeing him in their bed with her best friend. She wrote about the promises he broke, the way he shattered their future with one selfish act. And then she wrote the only words that gave her strength now. "I'm leaving you. I will raise our child with love, but without lies. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She folded the letter and gave it to the nurse with a simple request. "Please give this to him. I don't want to see him." Just minutes later, her mother entered the room, her face lined with concern but filled with warmth. Without a word, she went to Emily's side and gently hugged her, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. Emily finally let herself cry, quiet, exhausted tears that her mother caught in silence. There was no need for words. In that embrace, Emily realized something. She wasn't entirely alone. And she wasn't broken beyond repair. Weeks had passed since the hospital stay, and Emily no longer recognized the version of herself from before. The smiling, trusting woman who had kissed her husband goodbye that morning now felt like a faded memory. Someone naive, someone softer. But not gone. Just changed. She moved back into her childhood bedroom, the one her mother had carefully cleaned and prepared without a word. The old floral wallpaper was still there, along with shelves of books from her teenage years. But now, there were baby items stacked neatly in one corner. Gifts from neighbors, essentials her mother had quietly gathered, and the small bassinet Emily had picked out herself with trembling hands. She began therapy within days of leaving the hospital. At first, she sat in silence during the sessions, the counselor gently guiding her through the suffocating fog. But over time, the words came, slowly at first, then in waves. She spoke about the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the guilt she carried for not seeing the signs. The therapist never judged, only listened, and gave her the space to heal piece by piece. She returned to her prenatal classes too, walking in with shoulders a little higher each week. She started connecting with other expectant mothers, sharing smiles, small stories, and quiet moments of understanding. Her hands grew steadier, her voice stronger. Tyler called. He messaged. He even sent letters through mutual friends, begging to talk. Emily didn't respond. She changed her number, blocked him on every platform, and asked her mother to intercept anything else that came from him. Her silence was not out of hate, it was her boundary. Her healing. Her way of reclaiming control. She was no longer mourning what she had lost. She was building something new, for herself, and for the life growing inside her. The delivery room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the hushed encouragement of the nurses. Emily gritted her teeth through the final contraction, sweat dripping down her temple, her body trembling with exhaustion. And then, after hours of labor, a sharp, piercing cry filled the room. The nurse gently placed the newborn on Emily's chest, and the world seemed to pause. Her daughter. Tiny, red-faced, perfect. Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks as she wrapped her arms around the fragile body lying against her skin. The baby's cries softened as she settled into the warmth of her mother's chest, her little fingers curling instinctively around Emily's thumb. "Hope," Emily whispered through trembling lips. "Your name is Hope." It was more than just a name, it was a declaration. A promise. A reminder that even after all she had endured, something beautiful had come from the wreckage. She stroked Hope's head gently, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it pushed everything else, grief, betrayal, fear, into the background. In that moment, Emily wasn't broken. She wasn't abandoned or betrayed. She was a mother. And she had a purpose greater than any pain she had suffered. She kissed Hope's forehead and closed her eyes, whispering words meant for her daughter's soul. "I will protect you from lies, from cruelty, from anything that tries to steal your light. You'll never feel what I felt. I swear it." And with her baby in her arms, Emily felt truly strong, for the first time in a long time. The day after Hope's birth, Emily sat in her hospital bed, cradling her newborn against her chest when a nurse quietly entered the room. Her expression was gentle but hesitant. "There's a man here, Tyler Mason. He says he's the father and would like to see the baby." Emily's body tensed. She looked down at Hope, sleeping soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She'd imagined this moment, dreaded it. But now that it was here, she felt strangely calm. "Tell him I'll meet him outside the maternity wing." Alone. Wrapped in a soft robe, Emily stepped out into the hospital hallway a few minutes later. Tyler was pacing near the vending machines, his eyes red and shoulders hunched. When he saw her, he froze. "Emily," he breathed, rushing toward her. "I heard. I came as soon as I could." She nodded, keeping her distance. I'm so sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "What I did was unforgivable. I was stupid. Weak. I never meant to hurt you like that. Please. Can I at least see her?" Emily looked at him for a long moment. There were no fireworks of emotion left. No tears. Just a steady, grounded clarity. "Her name is Hope," she said softly. "You can be her father. She deserves to know who you are. But you and we're done. There's no going back from what you did." Tyler's face crumbled, but Emily didn't waver. "You lost me the day I saw you with her. But you'll never take away my strength. Or hers." And with that, she turned and walked away, back to the only future she cared about now. Months passed, and with each day, Emily grew a little stronger. Her nights were often sleepless, spent rocking Hope in her arms or whispering lullabies in the quiet dark. But even in exhaustion, there was joy. She learned the rhythms of motherhood, the feedings, the cries, the gentle milestones that came one at a time. Hope's first smile melted away the last of Emily's lingering self-doubt. But healing wasn't just about time. It was about choice. And Emily chose, every single day, to rise. She attended her therapy sessions faithfully, but more than that, she began to speak, not just about what happened to her, but about what could come after. How pain didn't have to be a prison. How heartbreak didn't have to be permanent. It started with a single post on a local moms group. Emily shared her story anonymously, offering an open invitation to any woman who had felt betrayed, silenced, or broken to join her for coffee and conversation. What she expected to be a small circle of 2 or 3 women turned into a growing weekly support group, one where raw honesty met compassion, and strangers became lifelines. She called it, From Ashes to Light. Through it, Emily found purpose. Women shared their stories, their tears, and their victories. They laughed together, healed together. Emily wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building something lasting, something empowering. Each time she looked into Hope's bright eyes, she saw a reflection of her own transformation. Her daughter wasn't just her reason to go on, she was proof that love, real love, still existed. And it started with loving herself. The sun poured in through the windows of the small living room, casting warm golden light across the wooden floor. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, arms open, eyes locked on the tiny figure wobbling a few feet away. Hope, now a year old, stood in her polka-dot dress, fists clenched for balance, her face lit with determination. "Come on, sweetheart," Emily whispered, her smile wide and eyes brimming with emotion. And then, it happened. Hope took one step, then another, then stumbled forward into her mother's waiting arms. Emily laughed through the tears, hugging her daughter tightly as the little girl squealed with delight. It wasn't just Hope's first steps, it was Emily's final step out of the shadows of everything she had endured. She was no longer a woman recovering from betrayal. She was a mother, a leader, a survivor. And she was whole. Later that afternoon, as Hope napped peacefully, Emily sat with a hot cup of tea and opened the latest issue of the local women's magazine. Her story filled the final pages, printed beside a candid photo of her holding Hope at the park. The title read, "She walked in and chose herself." Reading her own words in print brought a quiet pride she had never known before. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about reclaiming her voice. And sharing it, so others knew they weren't alone. She closed the magazine and glanced at the crib, where her daughter stirred in her sleep. Emily stood, walked over, and gently placed a kiss on Hope's forehead. The past no longer held her captive. She had walked through fire and come out glowing. And now, finally, she was at peace.